Welcome back to another episode of the Jesus Cartel. I did check after we uploaded the last episode, and it was our half-year mark. So we're officially in the latter half of our first year, and so I'm pretty pumped up. How you feeling?
Man, things are good. I'm glad that it's been successful, unlike some of our friends' podcasts and things that were not successful. So, going on over 6 months has got to be a success.
Yeah, man, 27 episodes, a lot more than 3.
Yeah,
and
I like
9 times, we're 9 times better than any podcast that's ever been filmed at this church before. That's a big deal.
Hey, I think it's great.
So last week we had a communication episode. We've been talking about doing a communication episode or a series of communication for a while. Mm-hmm. The more I thought about it, the more I really want to lean into that. And I just think that we have a lot to offer in terms of teaching people how to communicate better, be more effective communicators for themselves, for their families, their businesses, and all other aspects of life. And so we're going to dive back into that today. But first, I've got to get to know you segment question that I'm really curious about.
Okay, now let's just say this, preface this and say this. I have no idea this question or what we're doing after that. So last week we talked about communication, and you came with a whole list, and I just talked about your list, and
yes.
And I assume that's what we're going to do again today.
You're dang right.
So if I don't do well, it is what it is.
So we talked about a little last week about how you create patterns for yourself. Yeah. I'm creating a pattern of making myself seem more educated than you by always being prepared in a situation where I know that you're having a draw from the hip.
I like it.
So I'm brilliant. The get to know you segment question that you haven't heard at all is this. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, every meal, 3 squares, from today till the day you die, what meal are you going to go with?
Yeah, steak, baked potato, and Caesar salad.
Steak, baked potato, Caesar salad. Tell me why. Give me some details.
Well, just because, number one, if I had to choose a meal that I wanted to eat, that would be it. Number two, I think we could do some variations of the steak and baked potatoes or mashed potatoes or whatever right there. And plus, it would just be a really good balance. You'd have your red meat. You could choose it as lean as you want to. You have your straight carbs without a ton of fat in it in a baked potato, and then you make yourself feel better by eating a Caesar salad. So there you go.
Yeah, I like it.
So
solid answer. Solid answers. Yeah. Got some reasoning behind it. I enjoy that. Mine is similar in a way. I would go with a fully loaded nacho. Fully loaded, chicken, beef, shrimp, cheese, and go ahead and throw some, onions, peppers on there, that kind of thing. I could eat that for 3 squares. And if I'm ever tired of something, I eat around it, Yeah. And so it'd give me the ability to create a little variety. But the reality is my family kind of eats all forms of protein quesadillas almost exclusively as is because, right. My kids like them, and if they're eating them, we might as well eat them. And so we'll have deer quesadillas, chicken quesadillas, shrimp quesadilla, whatever kind of quesadilla. That's kind of the skull thing.
Something in a tortilla with cheese.
That's it. It. So if you're ever in the mood for a quesadilla, swing by. There's a real strong chance that we've got some going.
Hey, and that's a good answer, and especially on the tortilla side. If it was a tortilla side instead of the chip side, I could do that. We eat a lot of carb-balanced tortillas, but a lot of different things in that, and so I would choose that over any bread as far as if I had to eat it very often. So
yeah, well,
good answer.
Isn't all Mexican food just the same thing in different shapes? Really? And so
or our form of Mexican food.
Touche.
Yeah.
Touche.
When we go to Yucatan, it's totally different.
Yeah, fair point. And so we're honestly, just to be honest with our viewers, we're in a bit of a time crunch today.
There you go.
We're going to do the best that we can to pack in as much good information as we can, but we're going to be honest with you. We're going to be trying to cruise as much as we can also. But we wanted to hold true to the consistency that we've promised and that we value ourselves, and so we're making time to make this happen anyways. But so last week we started with some communication tips, just kind of like foundational, how we create patterns for ourselves and what those patterns represent. Today, and probably for the next several weeks, if Clay allows me to, I'm going to keep running the gauntlet on communication, try to give you all the detail you could possibly have on it. And so I want to ask some really specific questions to Clay. I, of course, am also completely unprepared seeing these questions for the first time. I certainly didn't write them. And we're both going to give our off-the-hip answers. And so, and to be fair, if there's any question that you'd rather I answer first so that you can ponder for a minute, I have no problem with that. I just like to kind of bounce it back and forth so I don't take control of the whole thing because I want to. And so my first question involving leadership is this. As a leader, the things that you're leading personally, you don't have to necessarily speak generally in this situation. As a leader, how much emotion is involved in your decision making as a leader and the things that you do?
Well, I think that it's it's a good idea to keep as much emotion out of it as possible, in the sense that we keep our emotions in check. But having emotions and using those emotions to make decisions and stuff is not always a bad thing. Mm-hmm. We should use emotions because the people that we're dealing with also have emotions, Correct. And we're all given emotions by God, and then we can develop those things. And so it's not like all emotions are bad and stuff, but you definitely want to keep them in check. And when we say in check, we don't want our emotions to rule anything that we do.
Correct.
Especially decisions. We say don't make an emotional decision. What we really mean by that is don't let your emotions this second rule how you feel about something for the future. Yeah. Is what we really mean. But it doesn't mean that emotions can't be a part of what decisions that we make and our leadership.
Yeah, and so, we talked about it, one of our first podcasts, first or second one, I think it was the second one, was a lot focused on this particular subject. And one of the things that we kind of agreed on, I kind of worded a certain way, and you sort of seemed to support the way that I worded it, was that, emotions accompany decisions. Mm-hmm. They're not exclusive to themselves. Right. You don't just get hit with a wave of emotion out of nowhere. There's something in your mind that you're deciding or you feel like is predetermined, out of your control, and there's an accompanying feeling that follows that. That's what your emotions are. They accompany decisions. They can't make decisions. They're not. They have no substance in and of themselves. And so anytime that you're feeling an emotion, you've either already decided something, or you've decided that something is completely out of your control and you're about to get railroaded a certain direction. That's what's making you feel the way that you're feeling. If you think that there's substance there in and of itself, you'll make a secondary decision that follows that. That's where the problem is. Yeah. The problem's not with the initial feeling. Right. The problem's with the second decision that gets made more times than not. And so my advice to most people, I've been talking to my wife about this a lot lately because, she's always trying to grow in leadership and communication, and it's my favorite thing in the world. The word that most people will be looking for here is you have to learn to detach. Mm-hmm. You got to detach yourself from the situation and be able to take an objective look at it if you weren't personally involved. But replace all the characters and how does this scenario play out? And that isn't the exclusive way to make the decision, but it's certainly going to help you have a more well-rounded perspective of the situation. And that is really the first thing I would suggest anytime you're doing something is detach yourself, look at it from a completely unbiased perspective as much as you can. Right. And then after you've kind of said, okay, well, if this was all strangers, this is kind of what I would do in this situation. Now start to reinsert the characters, because that's where the emotions get involved. That's where the relationships get involved. And undoubtedly, this is going to have an impact on their emotion and your relationships. And so that's the point to go ahead and start considering how those things will land. But the first portion of your decision as a leader has to come from an unbiased place. Right. And then you reinsert all of the little idiosyncrasies and things that are going to make it real complicated, and you sort it out from already having a big picture vision of what needs to happen. If you do it the other way and you consider all of the crazy emotions and the pushback and things like that first, it's going to make it really hard for you to ever find the big picture because you'll be so lost in that storm of emotion that's going on. Have you ever seen situations like that?
You see it all the time like that, especially because you get so emotionally involved. And so that was kind of going to be my point is when you can, do nothing for a minute.
Yeah.
You know, that's good. So right before we come on air, we found out something that, is a little difficult and something that we're going to have to deal with. But we didn't have to deal with it right then. Hey, we know we got to deal with this. We know it's an issue. But at the same time, what we don't want to do is overreact too quick. And then the other thing we don't want to do is come up and make some new rule or some new thing based off of this issue.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is, that there's an issue. Hey, there are emotions, that immediately come up because of the action, like you said. And then, but what we don't want to do is make another immediate reaction if we don't have to.
Yeah.
And most of the time, you don't have to. And, I tell people all the time, well, you don't have to do anything. Well, yeah, I do. You don't have to say anything. Well, yeah, I do. No, you don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be addressed. But it doesn't need to be addressed when, like you said, when you got yourself all up in the middle of it and your emotions are all up in the middle of it, and now we got to make a new rule or a new stand or a new whatever. No, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
There was an issue. We're well aware of the issue. We're going to handle the issue, but it doesn't have to be right now. And I think that break in the action takes a lot of the emotions, the detachment that you're talking about is so much easier to do when you're not in the middle of it.
Yeah. I mean, when you and I came together, because we both found out the information in separate places, so
right.
We weren't together when we found out. As soon as we came together, our first situation was to say, or my first reaction, I guess, was, I think this dude needs his tail whooped. You know what I mean? And probably, possibly, you know what I mean? But undoubtedly, that was an extremely emotional reaction.
Right.
Now, I didn't make a secondary decision and go hunt him down. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's where the problem comes in. The fact that my first thought was this guy would really benefit from an old country, tail whooping down the driveway, right. Is not really a big deal. But if I would have followed that up, now we got a problem.
Yeah.
Now we got a problem. And so learning.
Or if you called a lot of other people and said, hey, this is what I think needs to happen.
Yeah. Now I'm causing other people to make secondary decisions, right. and that's not good. And so, learning to detach is huge when it comes to leadership. People say all the time that it's impossible to make an unbiased decision. That's not true.
Right.
You can make a completely unbiased decision. Now, it's going to be very unpopular, mm-hmm. and you'll probably have to face a lot of backlash from parties, because especially if that unbiased decision genuinely does favor you, which it doesn't always. I would say more times than not it doesn't favor you, but sometimes it might. But it might just be the best thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like if you don't want to drive, me and you are going on a road trip, right? You don't want to drive. I don't want to drive. But my car gets better gas mileage than yours does. The unbiased decision that you would make would be, hey, man, we're taking your vehicle. That lands in your favor. You know what I mean? So there is potential for backlash to say, no, you're just saying that because you don't want to drive. And you encounter situations like that. But the reality is it's not your responsibility to deal with how people handle those type of situations. Amen. There's a certain amount of we never want to intentionally cause those feelings for people. So if you make the decision in a way where you know it's going to spite people, that is your fault. But if it's just the stripped down best decision that you could make, it's genuinely not your responsibility to control the way that people react to it. And you've got to be able to detach and still make a a good call. You got anything else you want to add
No,
to that part?
just,
you feel
you
good?
know, as far as unbiased decisions, I mean, that's just obvious to me that it can happen. But I think it does take a level of maturity there, you know. But if I watch a football game, two teams that, you know, neither one of them are my favorite teams, I can enjoy the football game and not be biased on either side.
Sure.
You know, I see myself cheering on the offense sometimes and cheering on the defense, and, you know, then kind of figuring out if it's going to play out this way and all that. But it's not based off of, you know, my opinions of either team. It's based off of what we see right there.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way. You can be subjective in that, where you're not basing it off of, you know, your preconceived ideas, but just what you see in the present.
Yeah.
You know, I may not think that you should be the one that drives most of the time. But in this instance, we're in your car. It's a car that I'm not used to. We made this decision based off of gas money and those kind of things. And so it would be more natural in this situation if you drove. Mm-hmm. You know, so there's no preconceived ideas there. Next time it could be totally different. You know, next time we're going to an event where people are going to see us drive up. Well, it'd be better if they rode in my car or my vehicle, because they see us drive up.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I deserved that. So, one, tagging this back to kind of our first episode of creating patterns, if you told me it would be best to take my car or my truck, I'd go with it, because you've created a pattern of unbiased decisions that don't benefit you a lot of the time. And so I would have no reason to assume that you're doing something squirrely to get out of it. A great example would be basketball. I used to play basketball a lot with the guys in the community and stuff like that. We'd all hang out and we'd play. And I'm the only person in the gym that will call a foul on myself. And I'm the only person in the gym who will say that I touched the ball and knocked it out of bounds if no one is sure. I'm the only person who would do it. And because I created a consistent pattern of honesty, when there is any sort of debate, even if I was outside, they will bring me inside and ask me to make a decision because of the pattern I created. And so I say all that to say, you get yourself out of the pickle by having a pattern of making these types of decisions. And so if you're always seeking after your self-interest, and then you get, you know, you finally make one unbiased decision, people probably aren't going to believe you. They're going to be looking for, yeah.
Well, we had a friend that, you know, was, you know, kind of known for wanting things to be his way. And so, you know, when you have someone that's kind of known for that, and you see that pattern, if he always wants things to be this way, then you can feel like anytime he's trying to communicate that he's trying to manipulate you.
Yes.
Because his end result is for you to see things his way. His end result isn't for us to come to a great conclusion. The end result isn't for him for us to come to the best case scenario. The end result is for us to do things the way he wants it done. Well, because of that, then you're already on guard.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, why does my opinion even matter?
Yeah.
He's fixing to try to manipulate whatever I'm trying to do in order to do that. And it wasn't with bad intentions. Leaders want things to be done their way sometimes.
Sure.
I understand that. But good leaders are also ones that, you know, that take on the opinions of others, and then let's formulate a plan together to be able to make this move forward.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of what creates, if you've ever had a feeling of like when somebody calls you, you're just like, oh, man, I don't want to take this call. That's usually why. It's because there's a pattern created that if there's a call happening here, whatever I'm feeling or think about the matter is not about to be taken into consideration. A decision's about to be made and thrust upon me, and I'm going to be forced to do whatever this is. And that's not a good feeling. And that's a leader's inability to detach is typically what creates those patterns for you as an employee or someone who serves under someone. And so, man, I think that's a really strong, just kind of opening point that we made. And now I want to lean into the next two questions, which are they kind of work in tandem. But so let's say you're a strong leader, and you're great at making unbiased decisions. How do you, as a leader, keep yourself from crossing over from supreme confidence into an area where you are arrogant or come off as very arrogant?
Yeah, man, I like this because it kind of goes back to another one of our episodes about self-assessment too.
Sure.
I had a conversation with a guy this morning one of my very best friends in the world, and I can speak freely to him, and he knows my heart. I could talk to this guy and tell him something complete opposite from what I believe about something, and he would know that I was just doing that. Yeah. It wouldn't change his thoughts about me at all because we have that kind of relationship to where we know each other so well. But this morning, I was kind of passionate about something that we were talking about, and I kept using the word I, and it even made me check it. And I said, look, man, I'm not trying to keep using the word I and talk about me. And he goes, no, I understand what you're trying to say, So we try to make sure that we keep ourselves in check. That there's a difference between, feeling good about yourself and being confident and all that, and then being cocky and arrogant. And I think that sometimes people would call that a fine line, but I really don't think it's that fine. I think that you can be very confident and, not in just your abilities, but the abilities that God has given you, and not be arrogant and cocky at all.
Yeah.
Now some people on the outside may not understand that, but the people on the inside, they will. I think there's a whole lot of difference between confidence and arrogance, but a lot of it has to do with how you communicate.
Yeah.
Your body language, the words that come out of your mouth, things that we've talked about before, whether people really think you're listening or whether you're, waiting for them to be quiet so you can say what you want to say, those kind of things. But yeah, being a good, confident, unbiased leader, or as unbiased as possible, leader, but also displaying confidence and not arrogance. I hope that me and you both find that very often in life, and I think we do.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple of things that I know are really big deals when it comes to keeping yourself from crossing over this line, and one is, what are your relationships like with your team? Mm-hmm. How are you tending to those? Because if your team genuinely knows that you have their best interest in mind, then very rarely, if ever, are you going to run into this problem. You run into this problem when your team starts to feel like you're more engaged in your own interests than you are theirs. And you as the leader, I hope, this may not be true, but I hope that you are the best decision maker in the room, and that is how you acquired whatever rank you got, and we do know that that's not always true. Right. The coach's kid likes to play shortstop. Right. But the reality is that if you have climbed the ranks an appropriate way, hopefully and probably you might be the best decision maker in the room, but that does not negate your responsibility to hear from your team on matters. And so, having taught a bunch of leaders and done workshops and stuff with a bunch of people and stuff over the years, what I have found a lot of times is that leaders don't intentionally not hear from their team. It's not something they do on purpose. They're not like, I don't value my team's stupid, I'm just not even going to ask them. That's not normally what happens. What normally happens is the leader lacks long-term vision, doesn't address things early enough, and by the time it gets to the decision-making process, he doesn't have time to consult everybody on his team. Right. And so he asks the 3 guys he likes the best and then makes a call. And 2 things happen. 1, most of the people feel unheard. 2, most of the people have now labeled those 3 guys as the only guys who matter in the business. Those are the favorites, we've seen it in school, we've seen it in job sites, we see it over and over and over again. But the reality is that problem stems from that leader's inability to have enough foresight to see when this is coming and take the appropriate amount of time to at least engage everyone. You don't even necessarily have to have everybody's opinion, but at least engage them on what might be coming down the road. I can't tell you how many meetings I have with people over stuff that may never happen. Mm-hmm. This may never happen, and I'll still sit down with them like, hey, look, we got a situation coming up. I don't know how it's going to play out. There's a possibility it may go this way. Just wanted to kind of give you a heads up about it. Tell me if you got any, kind of preliminary thoughts on the situation. And normally they're just like, oh, okay, thanks for letting me know. And all is well and all is tended to. And when decision-making time comes, they remember we had that conversation, had an opportunity to share with them. I should have said something then, or hey, I didn't have any input. This was all good, and so that's a really big thing that will help keep you from crossing over into arrogance. And one other thing that will pay massive dividends to you as a leader is this: fold your hand when you can. Mm-hmm. When you have opportunities to fold your hand in favor of somebody on your team's choice or decision or idea, do it. If it's, there are some things that are non-negotiable, you know what I mean? Like we can't all switch to electric vehicles right now at Fresh Start. And so if somebody suggested that, we'd have to shoot that one down, right. You know what I mean? But there are other things that, like, if you don't have a great idea or a solid idea, or you don't really know how something's going to play out and either idea could be, successful, we're not sure, always give the opportunity to the other person's idea and verbalize that as best you can. Hey, we're going to go with your idea. Mm-hmm. And then when you have the next meeting to implement it, hey, look, Dan had a really good idea. As many times as you can, like, show that you've stepped down from the pedestal of leadership and you've hoisted up someone else's idea. It goes so far.
For you and for them.
Yeah.
So, my ideas there are a lot. First off, you don't have to have great relationships with your team, but if you don't, they won't remain your team.
Yeah.
You have to have those relationships. They have to understand you, and you have to understand them. And not only do they have to understand you, but they have to think or understand. They have to know that you at least understand them to some degree, in their role there. And if not, they're not going to be around. And so, we had an example, just being transparent, at Fresh Start, where we had a board meeting on Sunday. My board of directors, a couple of those, we're having open discussion, and they're asking about a specific area, what I think about, this hypothetical situation, what I think we should do in this area. And so I voiced what I think that we should do in this area. And, they look to me for that guidance. That's why they pay me. Well, I felt real confident in what I thought, but one of the two of the board members had a varying opinion there. So the next day I come back to work and I get together our administration staff and I ask them, well, what do you think about this? Well, it just so happened that contrary to what I thought, they actually agreed with the board directors more so than they agree with me in this area, of how they thought something would play out if we implemented something, in particular. And, hey, I'm cool with that. I'm like, hey, that's a great idea. That's what you think. I mean, y'all are the ones doing it. You're the ones with the boots on the ground. You're the ones that's got to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. If this is what you think and this is what you think is better, then I'm okay with it too.
Yeah.
Now, most people wouldn't have done that.
Sure.
Most people, when they had, because I had a pretty strong opinion about it in the board director meeting, most people would have just left it there. Mm-hmm. Hey, we'll agree to disagree or whatever. But because of, being the leader that I am, I like to get other qualified opinions.
Yeah.
The board of directors isn't doing it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it every single day. Now, ultimately, the board of directors has got to be the one that makes the decision.
Sure.
But they're wanting me to give them my recommendation. Well, it'd be kind of foolish just to take their ideas and my ideas and that be it, when we got a whole staff of people that are the ones that actually be doing the implementation of it.
Yeah.
Be doing it every day. All we do is just make one decision. They got to deal with it every single day. Well, if this is something that could be detrimental or could be real positive, this is something that that our staff needs to have some input in. Now, because our staff knows me, if I took those ideas and took that knowledge and then come up with another idea that didn't have to do with what, they would still be okay because they felt like they were heard.
Yep.
And I think that's so important that as a leader that you let other people be heard. It doesn't mean you let unqualified people make leadership decisions. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean that you let the people, especially the people that are going to be implementing things, that you let them to have a voice.
Yep.
And I think that's something that we do well, that I wish more people would do well, that they would let people feel like they've been heard. I learned that a long time ago. People don't want to make those decisions. Non-leaders don't want to make leadership decisions. What they want is to feel like they're heard and feel like they're respected and they're cherished. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was there for that. I can confirm that happened exactly the way that you said it did. The other thing regarding that is that if you would have made...
Let me say one more thing, and then we'll go with that. One more thing is I turned around and reported back to my board of directors that, hey, look, after talking to the leadership team, they think something different, and I'm okay with it. Yeah. And so I just want y'all to know that. And then one of my board of directors calls me and goes, man, that's why we like you. Is because you're not scared to get other good opinions and then make decisions. And it's not that I'm asking other people to do my job for me. Ultimately, I'm going to make that recommendation, but I want to make it as qualified as possible. So what happened from that? My staff felt like they were heard, and so they feel strengthened that I would even ask. And then now my board of directors, the people that hire me, that pay me, are even more encouraged because they see this in my life, but they saw it again, and guess what? You're talking about keeping you back from being arrogant and cocky. That's a good way to do it. Yeah. Get other opinions, and then when they're, right, and admit where you're wrong or where you need to go with those opinions. Hey, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, admit you're wrong any chance you get.
Amen.
And so if you would have made, I don't want to necessarily say the correct decision, I want to say the other decision right off, because that's what you said. You had an idea in mind. Your administration staff who implements had a different idea. Let's say you would have had that idea, the second idea originally, right? And you're thinking like, hey, look, this is jam up. Ain't no reason to ask nobody. I'm certain that this is right. And now we know on the latter half that we would have all agreed. But if you wouldn't have asked, there still would have been questions. So why didn't he? I'm the one implementing this. Why wouldn't he even bother to ask whether or not I thought that this was a good idea?
Right.
And here's the other thing. Let's say that I'm going to just use myself. So I agreed with the second plan. Let's say you never asked, though. You just implemented it. And then 3 months down the road, we see that's a major flop. Major flop. Now, because you never asked, I have the opportunity to say, I could have told you that wouldn't have worked. Which is a complete lie. Right. Complete lie. I would have went with but now there's accountability for all of us.
Yes.
We all
We're
have
in it together.
We all have ownership. And so now not only do I need this to succeed, and so that brings forth a different level of effort because I was part of the decision-making process. I was part of the one that said that this is going to work. This is going to be okay. Whereas if you're the only one who made a call, I don't really care if it works or not, is the attitude of most people. Because, hey, look, man, that's above my pay grade. How many times you hear stuff like that? You know what I mean? Like, I just work here.
Right. Well, let's look at it from another point of view. Let's say the scenario happened the exact way that it did happen, okay, and the way it happened. Now the people that are doing the implementation are really going to try to make this program work because they come up with it and the boss really didn't think that it would for sure work, but he's going to go with it anyhow. Well, they're even going to work harder because it's their idea or their opinion, And then the thing that you said about fold when you can, man, I've been trying to teach people this for years. God showed it to me, and I say it a little different. I say, choose to let other people win. Choose. Other people need to feel like they're winners too.
Yep.
They don't need to feel like you win all the time. We only do what you want to do. We only eat where you want to eat. We only, value what you want to value. That gets old quick. It's like, why am I even here? Especially don't even ask my opinion if we're not going to do it. And so letting people win or folding what you think to help other people, man, it's huge for me.
Yeah.
I think it's huge. I want everybody to feel like a winner, not just like they hang out with one with me,
Yep, and if you do fold your hand or, let other people win when you can, the other thing that it creates is you create a pattern for yourself about being generally correct because you're not sticking a flag in the ground over stuff that you're unsure about. Right. And so you only stick a flag in the ground when you have to, and there's without a shadow of a doubt, it has to be done this way. That's the only time you draw a line in the sand. If you do that, then more times than not, 99 out of 100, maybe 95 out of 100, you're going to nail. And people are going to see you as a competent leader who, hey, when he makes a call, he gets it, And it's because you don't make every call. That's the key, Imagine if as a football coach, you could pick the games you didn't think you were gonna win, and you just said, we're just not going to play those.
Right.
Well, you'd have a lot better record.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just going to play the games of the teams I know we're going to beat.
Yep.
Well, you're going to win most of those games, 9 out of 10 of them, and it's going to make you look like a jam-up coach. And the reality is, not that you're not jam-up, you have the wisdom to fight the battles that are worth fighting. Yeah. That is part of being a jam-up leader.
Choose your battles wisely.
Correct. I think you gave that on maybe a marriage episode or something like that.
And that's something I use a lot,
and
I don't know if it was last week or before, but people say all the time, last week we talked about common misconceptions, and then my family members text me some of those this week, and I thought that was funny that we were able to engage in that a little bit more, But, people think that I always get my way. Mm-hmm. But the reason is because there's most of the battles I don't ever even fight. So they never see it. So they just, they don't count those battles because I never fought them.
Yeah.
But when there is something major that comes up and I do, fight, I usually win because people know that I don't fight every battle.
Yep.
They're like, like we got a member of our church that's been part of our leadership team since the very beginning, Brother Jeff Ely. And Brother Jeff Ely could go through, 10 different leadership board meetings and never say a word.
Yeah.
But when he does say something, we're all going to listen.
Yes.
Yes.
And
even if he has an opinion that's different than ours, we're going to stop our opinion and really try hard to value his opinion over our own, because we all speak at every board meeting and he speaks once a year.
Yeah.
And so if he thinks this is a battle worth fighting for him, then, man, I want him to win.
Yeah.
Number one, because he never tries to fight a battle. Number two, because he's probably right.
Yep.
Yep.
And Jeff's a great example too, because I've been around for a long time. I've probably spoken 10 words to Jeff in 8 years.
Right.
It's not because he's not great.
Right.
He's just a man who speaks when he needs to. It's just how he is. And you when he speaks, filled with wisdom, but he just speaks when he needs to. And so that would be somebody that if he said something that disagreed with me, it would stop me in my tracks.
Sure would.
Like if I was going to make a decision by the end of the day, I might push it to the end of the week to figure out what I missed. Because if he's saying something, there's a good chance I missed something somewhere, And
I think that's where we want to be a lot too.
Yeah.
And I know, everybody's different. I mean, we lead organizations, we lead groups. We have to be more vocal. I understand that. Jeff's a little more in the background. I'm not saying we all have to be like Jeff Ely, but we do want people to value our opinion because they know that we value theirs. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And, I don't want to get into it a whole lot in this moment, but, your opinion's not always called for either. There are times that people aren't asking for your advice. And if you give it every opportunity you have, it loses some value, especially if people don't want it. And so, the Bible says a lot about wise people not speaking so much. And, There's definitely something to that.
Amen.
Yeah. So just kind of on the flip side of that, we talked about, how does a strong leader keep from crossing over into arrogance? How does a leader who is extremely relational keep from falling into a place where his humility turns to or appears as weakness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's good too. Another, version of that question is, how do you become real friendly with the people that you're leading, but not, lose that respect and everything? And, that's a good one. It's good to be able to look at that. And so you have to look at, sometimes we have to go back to the main thing. What are we trying to accomplish in this group? What are we trying to accomplish in this organization? What are we trying to accomplish? And we need to make sure that we're accomplishing those things. And so we can't get so far off track to where we're trying to be so relational and let everybody have opinion and stuff that we're not meeting our expectations of what we're supposed to do. Or we're going, against what God would have us to do, for sure. So, I've been leading the same organization for 17 years. We're all friends. We're family. We love each other. We care about each other. But from time to time, I have to remind everybody, hey, this is our role. This is what we're supposed to do. Let's make sure that we might need to tighten up in this area or tighten up in that area, and it's important. I have, what I have printed out, expectations of staff. And my expectations of my staff hasn't changed. But about once a year, I need to break it out and remind everybody what they're expected and what we expect out of them, and that's to help them. Because as humans, we forget. Sometimes we get out of focus. But it's also, good for them to realize and remember that I am the leader here. Ultimately, we're going to go in the direction that I feel like we should go. Now, I want to have as many of your qualified opinions to get there, but at the same time, ultimately, I got to make that decision. The board of directors cannot fire my staff.
Yeah.
Only I can.
Yeah.
Now, they can fire me.
Yeah.
But they can't fire my staff. And so, and I'm just using that as an example, but they hire me. They don't hire the staff. So ultimately, I'm responsible. So I had to make those decisions. So even though we're all friends and we love each other and all that, they're not the one that's next on the line, so to speak, or whatever. Sure. I am. I'm the one that's looked at to produce. Mm-hmm. Now, I produce based off of me and my team, but I'm looked at that way. So you got to keep that in mind, too, that, hey, if God's called you to a leadership role, he's called you to a leadership role. Now, it's good to have a team, and it's good to have people come alongside you and to use their opinions and stuff, but you're the one that's called. It's kind of like the way in my family. Ultimately, I'm going to lead my family.
Yeah.
Now, I want to have, Becky be a biggest part of that as possible, and my kids have a biggest part of that. But God didn't call Becky to lead our family. He called me to lead our family. Well, guess who he's going to be looking at, to make sure that it's doing right? Me.
Yeah.
Not her and not the kids. And that's the reason why it's very important that we don't let our kids run over, us and run over those things, because God didn't call them to lead our family. That's out of the will of God. If you let your kids make grown-up decisions at your home and decide the direction of your family, that is out of the will of God.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with leadership. Hey, we want to be humble. We want to be meek when we do, but ultimately, you were called to this role.
Yep. Yep. I know a guy who leads a team, and he, you kind of have both aspects of it. So, we talked about the arrogance and humility, and then we're talking about arrogance becoming something because you're too strong of a leader. And then we're talking about humility turning kind of into weakness. So, from the arrogant side, I've worked for a guy before who, the business had 30 employees and there were 60 employees terminated over the course of a year. There was blame being shifted every time something that it didn't go right. And he was unable to self-assess and realize that the problem was coming from the top. You know what I mean? So it's arrogance. On the flip side of that, I know another leader who is great relationally, but desperately doesn't want to be the guy who doesn't need discipline, anything like that. He wants everybody to just always feel encouraged and, leave happier than they got there that day. And that is equally dangerous. It's equally dangerous. And so we have to find a way so if you feel like you're the second guy, you have to find a way to build accountability daily into your leadership style. And so we never want to not see how people are doing on their job. They need to answer for that as often as possible. It doesn't have to be a crazy dark meeting. I hold people accountable on the regular just with simple questions. Hey man, what are you working on today? Yeah? Do you expect to be done by the end of the day? Cool. Yeah, I'll come back, holler at you in a little bit. We'll see what's going on. We come back, it's not near done. Oh man, what happened? What's going on? Thought we said that this is gonna be close to finish. Something happened. Do you need something from me? Did I not provide you with something you needed? And we kind of get into, because here's the deal. It may be his fault. He may be being lazy, or I may have failed to give him what he needed to accomplish the job. And so the conversation's absolutely necessary. Maybe it's something he's never really done before. I asked him to do it. He was a little nervous to say, hey man, I really don't know how to do that, because it's hard to tell your boss that you don't know how to do something they just asked you to do. So he's kind of just trying to figure it out. And here we are, not even close to done. A little bit of instruction would have cleared that right up. But if I don't ever ask those questions, I don't ever get those answers. And so, just build it into the day. You know what I mean? Set small goals, set expectations, and then come back behind and check and see whether or not they were accomplished the way that you want them to be. Too many people set big goals and only check on that goal. We want to be done with this project in 3 weeks. And they don't look at it again until the week it's due, and they're like, man, we're not even close to done. Well, if there would have been some small accountability along the way, they'd have been a lot closer to meeting this goal, because it's a daily checklist of stuff. And so that's what I would suggest if you feel like you might be bordering the friendship, humility, weakness area, is that build some accountability in there, have those conversations, and it will get easier and easier, because the accountability is not scary. Accountability is scary for people who've never been held accountable, but accountability is not scary to a teammate. It's scary to a slave. You know what I mean? And if that's the type of relationship you have, then yeah, it's going to be a not so good thing. But if that's your friend, that's your teammate, you know what I mean? Like, that's, even as an employee is not slave. You know what I mean? Like, I've been friends with most of the people I've worked for over the years. But it's because of the relationship we established. And so if they said, hey man, what are you working on? When do you expect it to be done? I got no problem answering those questions, And so, build that in there.
People like reaching goals.
Yeah.
And if you don't give them any goals, then they don't get to like reaching goals, because you didn't give them any. And so measurable, attainable goals, is a good thing. Hey, job descriptions is a good thing. We have a friend right now that's frustrated in his position because he's never been given a job description.
Yep.
He's given a paycheck, but he isn't given a job description. He's given, some ideas of things that you could do, and is never told whether they were happy with the job he did or not happy with the job he did. So he just doesn't have direction, and so it's frustrating him, because, and you would think, oh, that'd be great, paycheck with no expectations and all that, but this guy's a leader. That's not cool for him.
Sure.
Hey, does he enjoy the flexibility? Sure he does. Does he enjoy somebody not having their finger over him? Sure he does. But at the same time, he's frustrated because his leader is too relaxed in this area. Maybe not overall, but as far as his area. So he needs a job description. He needs to be able to turn in his job performance and feel good about what he did.
Absolutely.
So just remember as leaders, that things that you do directly affect the ones that work with you and around you.
Yeah, for sure. Because the thing is just because there's no job description, that doesn't mean there's no expectation.
Right.
There is an expectation that becomes impossible for that person to meet because they have no idea what it is.
That's it.
And so they might be doing well above the effort level of what you're expecting, but in an area that you don't really care about. And so all of the effort is for naught because you're still dissatisfied with your employee because he's not doing what you have pictured in your head. Right. He needs these things written down. Give your people boxes to check. Those are little victories, and they go a super, super long way. And if you've laid out expectations, this is one of the things that's very difficult for very meek leaders. If you're having trouble with an employee, it's very hard for them. Trouble with an employee is simple to deal with. First of all, you got to detach. It's the first thing you have to do. And look at it a couple of ways. If an employee is underperforming, the first thing you need to do is offer to train him more effectively. It's the first thing that has to happen. If you train him more effectively, and you know whether or not you've done your due diligence training somebody, if you've trained them effectively, they're still underperforming, your next step is to move them to a different position. Once you move them to a different position, if they're still underperforming, that's when you let them go. Right. You don't just jump to, hey, he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Do I fire him? That's not the first step. Train them well. If they're not qualified to do that, even after the training, give them something easier. If you got the space for it, If they can't do that either, or they just don't have the work ethic or care to do that, that's when you release them. And so it's not more complicated than that. But you gotta be able to detach. It's not about how you feel, how they feel, because if you trained them, they had the opportunity. You know what I'm saying? It was a choice to not put forth the effort at that point. And then you gave them a different job that was easier. And then they made a second choice, not to do that. And so that relieves you of any of your responsibility. You shouldn't feel bad. You shouldn't feel guilty about those things. Man, this seems like a spot we're going to have to go ahead and put a pin in it for today.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to keep going next week, man? I'm enjoying this. I'm not gonna lie.
Man, let's just keep doing it. I mean, basically, we're talking about leadership. Everybody wants to learn more about leadership. We're talking about communication. People want to, talk about communication. I think it's all good.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good. I ain't got nothing else. I'll see you guys next week.
Appreciate it.